Today we're going back to a video I haven't done in a pretty long time, the most overpaid player from every NBA team. And a lot's changed since I last did one of these. Not much needs to be explained here, so let's go. First we have the Celtics with Gordon Hayward. And there might be a couple guys you could think of on the Celtics who are getting a little overpaid, but no one's competition for Gordon, who's getting $32 million a year, but has faced injuries and hasn't even been close to the player that the Celtics thought they were getting when they signed him to that max contract in 2017. And to be honest, a max contract even back then was still pretty questionable, but at least it's almost over. Then the Miami Heat, and I'll say they don't have any overpaid players. As we know, most of the roster consists of young and role players, so no one's really even able to be overpaid. One could argue for Iguodala. He's the Heat's third highest paid player, but with his experience, I'd pay that too to have him on the team. The Bucks. There's no contest for this Bucks spot though, because they gave Chris Middleton a max contract, and I really still don't know why. That's really just like if the Blazers gave CJ McCollum a max deal. They were just so caught up in thinking he was the perfect complement to Giannis that they had to keep him. But they didn't have to. If they let him walk, think of all the players that would have just lined right up to play with Giannis. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Chris is terrible, but he's definitely not max contract worthy. The 76ers. It really is sad to see that on a team with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, who have already gotten paid. Tobias Harris and Al Horford were the team's two highest paid players this year, and they're both co-owners of this spot for this team, even though Harris has done a lot more than Horford this year. And that's because both of their contracts are terrible, and Al's already not very effective at 34 years old, but at 38 years old, he'll still be getting paid $26 million. And in the year 2024, Tobias Harris is going to be getting paid $40 million. $40 million! Oh, and he'll be the team's highest paid player every single year until then, even over Simmons and Joel. The Brooklyn Nets really don't have anyone overpaid, but maybe Kevin Durant could turn out that way depending on how his return goes. The Knicks do have an overpaid player though, and it's definitely Bobby Portis. Julius Randle's the team's highest paid player, and that makes sense, he's shown a lot of potential, but Portis didn't, and the most notable thing he's ever done in his career was punch his teammate. But the Knicks being the Knicks paid him $15 million this year, and will do so next year too. For the Orlando Magic, they have Aaron Gordon making $19 million a year and Evan Fournier making $17 million. And honestly, I don't know who to give this one to. I'd probably lean more towards Aaron Gordon though, mainly for the fact that he's just been getting worse every single year, while Fournier is still getting slightly better and is just now hitting his prime. But then again, he's still only just a scorer, so how much better can he really get? So it's 50-50 here. The Pistons. It's crazy to think that this was finally the last year of Brandon Knight's big 5-year $70 million contract that he signed with the Suns in 2015. He put up 19 a game the year that he signed it, but has been terrible ever since then. So he made $15 million this year, and it's the last year that he's going to be an overpaid player. The Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are still bad, and they have a team full of young players, so they did take on a few bad contracts this year. And the biggest one that they still have, which runs out at the end of this season, is Jeff Teague, who got paid $19 million this season, and for a bench player that averaged 10 points a game, Jeff made way more than he should have. The Cavs. The Cavs wouldn't be the Cavs if they didn't have an overpaid player, and it's not surprising that they have 3 of them. Tristan Thompson at $18 million, Andre Drummond making $27 million, and Kevin Love getting paid $28 million. And I'm gonna give this one to Kevin Love, even though he's the best player that I just mentioned, just for the fact that they had no business signing him to that contract that was so big for so long at this stage of his career. He's not a near max contract player because he's very far away from the days where he was a team star. And the Bulls still have one of, if not the most overpaid player in the NBA, and no one is still sure how Otto Porter got a deal so big. I mean, the Wizards really thought he was gonna be a star player, and we're just so wrong. He made $27 million this year, and will do so next year too. The Raptors. I love what Marc Gasol brought to the Raptors, even though he's transitioned into being a role player now. And since he did make that transition, but was still in the last year of his huge contract, he was a role player for Toronto, coming off the bench making $25 million. But hey, we can't even be mad at this one. The Pacers' most overpaid player goes to Miles Turner. He's making $18 million right now, and he's not like severely overpaid. He's one of the better defenders in the entire NBA, but for how much he really lacks on offense still, plus for the fact that he doesn't even really fit in with Sabonis anymore, I'd say they're paying him a little bit too much. The Wizards, easily John Wall, no comment. The Hornets. I mean, what's even going on here? Seriously, the Hornets' 4 highest paid players are all so overpaid, and only one of them is any good. Nicholas Batum made $25 million this season. Bismack Biyombo made $17 million. Cody Zeller made $14 million, and Terry Rozier made $19 million this season. The first 3 prove why the Hornets are always terrible, and I'm not too mad at Rozier's contract because he did have a good year, but for the fact that Devontae Graham came in on a $1 million deal and pretty much outplayed him, it makes him look bad. But yeah, Batum, Bismack, and Zeller, I'll take this one. The Lakers, they really have nobody, but if I was going to give it to somebody, it'd probably be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for obvious reasons. The Clippers also don't really have any overpaid players. One could argue that Paul George is it, especially seeing how inconsistent he's been in the playoffs, while being the team's highest paid player over Kawhi Leonard, but we'll leave this one at no one. The Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets overpaid Paul Millsap this year in what was the last year of his huge contract. The contract's over when the season officially ends, so they'll finally be free of that, but he still makes this spot for making $30 million this year, which was the most on the team. The Jazz. Mostly any team that Mike Conley plays for, he'll always be their most overpaid player. He's still on what was a max contract and has still never been an all-star. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be an all-star to get paid a lot. I'm just saying that he's played at about the same level ever since he signed that max deal in 2016, and I assume the Grizzlies thought that he was going to get a lot better, which was why they gave it to him, but he hasn't. The Pelicans, not a super exciting one, but this one goes to Derek Favors, who made $17 million this year, and it's what he made last year too, and I still don't have any idea why the Jazz gave him a deal like that when they did. The Spurs, where we have DeMar DeRozan, and well, it turns out that DeMar DeRozan was the reason that the Raptors could never take things to the next level back when he played for them, because they won a championship last year, did great this year, and Kyle Lowry's played better than he ever has, all while DeRozan's the highest paid player on the Spurs, and they couldn't even make the playoffs. The Thunder. For the Oklahoma City Thunder, surprisingly, I'm not really mad at anyone's contract. At the start of last year, a lot of people said CP3 was the most overpaid player in the league, but after this year, there's no way. If I had to give it to somebody though, I'd probably say Steven Adams, and last time I said this, a lot of people got angry, so I know it's coming, but come on. He does a lot on the court, on and off the ball, but $25 million a year? He's not that effective. For the Houston Rockets, we have Russell Westbrook, and okay, I know what you're thinking. A lot of times I might be guilty of talking bad about Russ, but that's not what I'm doing here. In terms of across the NBA, he's not overpaid. He deserves a max deal, but while he's playing with Harden and is being paid more than him, which has made him the highest paid on the team, we could call him that. So just in that aspect, just in terms of Rockets players, he's overpaid. Plus, he was the only one I could even make an argument about on this team, so I had to do it. The Mavericks. Then with the Mavs, there's also not really anyone who's making too much, aside from Tim Hardaway Jr. He's a great pure scorer, and most players would love a player like that on their team, but probably not for $18 million a year. It just seems like a little much compared to how productive he is on the floor. The Blazers. It's a no contest for Portland though, seeing that Hassan Whiteside made $27 million this year, just as much as CJ McCollum did. He's a good player, and on a new team he'll probably get like a $15 million a year contract somewhere, especially from a team that could really use a center, but he had no business making anywhere near that this season. The Grizzlies. The Grizzlies then have Gorgie Jang, who somehow for some reason is the team's highest paid, making over $16 million a year. The Suns. The Suns are paying Ricky Rubio just about that same amount, and I'd say they really aren't paying anyone too much, but if I really had to pick someone, I would say Rubio, just by a little bit. I like that dynamic he brought to Phoenix this year. They desperately needed a point guard, so after they missed out on basically everyone else during last offseason, he was all that was left, which was why they overpaid him. The Kings. A lot of young teams' front offices are doing things right, but the Sacramento Kings aren't one of them. They got Harrison Barnes making $25 million this season, and that's just way too much. And also Kent Bazemore is making $19 million, which is also too much, but they traded for him while they re-signed Harrison to his deal. And I mean, just wait it out next time for a better player, instead of giving someone who averages 14 points a game in their prime $20 million a year. The Wolves then took on Evan Turner's bad deal this year and paid him $18 million for the last season of his contract. I still really have no idea how he landed a contract that big in the first place, and that might not ever make sense. The fact that James Johnson's also making $15 million a year probably won't ever make sense either. Then finally we have the Warriors, who do a great job of handling all the contracts on their team. They haven't overpaid anyone in a while, and as we know, the only reason they have Andrew Wiggins on the roster making $27 million a year on a max contract is because they're waiting to trade him. Still paid too much, but it's not the Warriors' fault. There's just so many players getting these huge contracts, and it's crazy. There was at least one from almost every team, and multiple from almost every team. Teams are just throwing out money, hoping that players are going to be these superstars when they aren't, and it's costing them big time. But comment down below your pick for the most overpaid in the league. Drop a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more videos coming soon.